The sun was setting over the quiet town of Maplewood, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. Inside a small art studio tucked at the corner of Birch Street, Emma Sullivan, a 32-year-old art teacher, stood frozen in front of a half-finished painting. Her brush trembled in her hand as tears welled up in her eyes. For the last 6 months, Emma had been struggling to finish her latest art piece, a large canvas meant for the local gallery's charity exhibition. It wasn't just any painting, it was supposed to be a tribute to her late father, who had always encouraged her to paint from her heart. But since his passing, every color she touched felt lifeless. That evening, she had almost decided to give up, until a familiar knock echoed from the studio door. "Come in," she said softly, wiping her tears. The door opened, and in walked Ethan Miller, a 34-year-old carpenter and longtime friend of Emma's father. He had known her since she was a child, the kind of man who could fix almost anything with his hands. Ethan carried with him the scent of fresh wood and paint, and a calmness that somehow steadied her every time he was near. "Still struggling with that masterpiece?" he asked with a gentle smile. Emma sighed. "I don't even know why I bother anymore. I can't capture what he meant to me." Ethan stepped closer, his voice firm yet kind. "You can. You just don't believe it yet." She looked at him, tired and defeated. "I've tried everything, Ethan. Nothing works." Ethan studied the painting, soft strokes of a man standing under an oak tree, holding a little girl's hand. "You're trying to make it perfect," he said quietly. "But your dad didn't love you for being perfect, Emma. He loved you for trying." For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, with a shaky breath, she dipped the brush in blue paint. "I can't do this," she whispered again, her hand hesitating. Ethan stepped forward and gently placed his hand over hers. "Then don't do it alone." Their hands moved together, slow and deliberate, as they filled the sky on the canvas. Emma could feel her heart racing, not because of him, but because of what the painting finally began to mean again. Every stroke reminded her of her father's laughter, his advice, his faith in her. After an hour of silence, Ethan stepped back. "There," he said softly. "Now it's alive again." Emma looked at the painting. The little girl was smiling, the man's face finally visible. It was her father, smiling the same way he always had. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Ethan, don't stop," she said through sobs. "Please, don't stop helping me." Ethan smiled gently. "I'm not going anywhere." But what Emma meant was more than painting. She was begging him not to stop believing in her, not to stop reminding her that she still had something beautiful to give. That night, they stayed late in the studio. Ethan worked quietly in the corner, fixing a broken easel, while Emma painted with a calm she hadn't felt in months. For the first time, she didn't chase perfection, she chased emotion. As midnight approached, she set her brush down and stepped back. "It's done," she whispered. Ethan turned, his eyes softening. "It's beautiful." The next morning, the gallery owner, Linda Price, arrived early for the exhibition setup. When she saw Emma's painting, she stopped in her tracks. "Emma," Linda said with astonishment. This is breathtaking. It tells a story without words." Emma smiled humbly. "It's a story about not giving up." When the exhibition opened later that week, Emma's painting became the centerpiece. People gathered around it, whispering about the emotion and honesty it carried. Some cried, others smiled, but everyone felt something. Ethan stood quietly at the back, watching her receive applause and appreciation. When she finally looked his way, he gave her a simple nod. She walked over, her eyes shining. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said softly. He chuckled. "You just needed someone to remind you of what was already inside." Later that evening, as they locked up the studio, Emma paused near the door. "You know," she said, smiling, "I thought I was asking you not to stop painting with me, but what I really meant was, don't stop believing in me." Ethan met her gaze. "I won't, Emma. Some things are worth believing in forever." Over the next few weeks, Emma's career flourished. She was invited to teach at art workshops and even had her painting featured in a local newspaper. But more importantly, she rediscovered herself, the version her father had always believed in. Every evening, Ethan would stop by the studio, fixing things, building new frames, and encouraging her whenever she doubted herself. Their friendship became a quiet partnership built on respect, care, and mutual trust. One afternoon, as the sun streamed through the window, Emma began a new painting, a field of sunflowers under a bright sky. She turned to Ethan and smiled. "This time," she said with determination, "I'm painting for me." He grinned. "That's the Emma I know." When the painting was finished, she wrote a single line at the bottom of the canvas, words her father used to tell her. "Never stop believing, even when it hurts." Ethan looked at the words and smiled. "Your dad would be proud." Emma nodded, eyes glistening. "He already is. Months later, during another exhibition, a young girl approached Emma. She couldn't have been older than 10, holding a small notebook full of drawings. "Miss Emma," the girl said shyly, "I love your paintings. I want to be an artist like you, but sometimes I feel like I'm not good enough." Emma bent down, smiling warmly. "You know what my dad used to tell me?" she asked. "He said, the only time you fail is when you stop trying. So promise me, don't stop." The little girl nodded eagerly. "I promise." As the girl walked away, Ethan came up beside Emma. "She reminds me of someone," he said playfully. Emma laughed softly. "Maybe of someone who begged you not to stop." He smiled. "Exactly." They shared a quiet laugh. Two people who had learned that sometimes, the most powerful plea isn't about love or loss. It's about hope. It's about asking someone not to stop believing in you when you've forgotten how. And for Emma, that was the beginning of everything beautiful again. Moral of the story: sometimes, "Don't stop" isn't a plea for help, it's a cry for hope. The ones who stay and remind us of our strength become the silent heroes of our story.